You are now tuning into the Resilient Podcast. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of the Resilient Podcast. I am your host, Rob Aurelius. And in the last episode, episode number 6, we talked about the Resilience Project, which is going to be a documentary that I am creating and putting together with a few people, a few amazing folks, to pretty much explain the reason behind the Resilient Podcast. Now, I know that we're 7 episodes in, so of course, by now, those that have been hearing and watching this podcast since the beginning, episode 1, pretty much knows a little bit the story already. For those that are just tuning in now, those that are just maybe your first episode you're hearing of the podcast, we're talking about resilience. We're talking about Rob Aurelius wanting to, be with someone for the rest of his life, and unfortunately it being cut short due to the fact that my ex-girlfriend believed that we were not compatible. And now dealing with the breakup, dealing with everything that happened, and trying to process and digest everything, and trying to move on. So before we get into that, I just want to say that this past week, my friend Megaran was in town, Brooklyn to be exact, and he's on a tour right now with some of his associates, and he went to a place in Williamsburg, if I'm not mistaken, and it was called Elsewhere. And I was glad that I was able to come out to show him some love. The last time I saw Megaran was actually in Philadelphia during WrestleMania weekend. And, with it now being July, the middle of the summer, I'm not sure when I'm going to see him again. If I'm going to see him again at all this time, at any time this year, or if I won't see him till probably next year. So Megaran is a very good friend of mine. Megaran is, for those that don't know who he is, Megaran is a music artist who started off as a teacher, a professor, and he's from Philadelphia, and then eventually became a rapper. Megaran is known for his great music. He's known for his podcast, Matt Mania Podcast. And Megaran and I connected through the world of professional wrestling. Megaran's a big WWE fan. And speaking about WWE, Megaran actually was on a episode of SmackDown. I believe it was a July 4th edition back in, I don't know, 2019, 2018, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on the year. But it was an episode of SmackDown Live, and Megaran was actually on that episode when the New Day had a rap battle against the Usos, and I believe Wale was the one who was orchestrating that rap battle. And Megaran was in the ring wearing a gigantic Uncle Sam hat, and it was funny. So for those who want to check it out, you could just go on YouTube, and I'm sure you could type in New Day Usos rap battle on SmackDown, and you'll see Megaran right in the middle of the ring. Also, it doesn't end there. Megaran has done 2 other things in WWE. The second thing he did was he created the song for Xavier Woods when Xavier Woods won the King of the Ring 2 years ago. And I believe the name of the song was called Bow Down. And great song. It was Xavier Woods' first ever singles theme. And Mega Ran was one of the guys behind it. And then the most recent thing that Mega Ran did, and I look forward to the day that I can interview Mega Ran on this podcast. WrestleMania 40, which was the last time I saw him, he was actually part of the entrance for the main event of Roman Reigns. So for those of you that are wrestling fans or those of you that watch WrestleMania, if you remember when Roman Reigns came out this year, he came out to a band that orchestrated a song for him. It was a live orchestra, and Mega Ran was a part of that. And hopefully someday we could get Mega Ran on this podcast. Well, not hopefully. We're going to get Mega Ran on this podcast. Remember, we got to manifest everything in life. And, we're going to get Mega Ran on this podcast, and we're going to listen to his story. And he's going to share with everyone how he actually was able to be a part of that. So until then, I have plenty of time to get him on the podcast. But until then, in this episode, again, we're going to talk about understanding the healing process when, it's a breakup or something drastic has happened in your life. So let's get to that. So for those of you that already know, like I mentioned before, the Resilient Podcast was created because earlier this year in March, my ex-girlfriend and I parted ways. And it has been the most difficult thing that's ever happened to me. And it is now July. And, as I sit and just think about this, because I think about this on a daily basis, this month we were supposed to make 11 months together, with the notion of next month being together for a year. And also, it's been 4 months since we broke up. So it's two things that I had to think about. I had to think about, oh man, what would have it been like if we were together now during 11 months? And also, like I said, it's been 4 months. We broke up in March 21st to be exact. And August 20th was the day that we started dating. So on July 20th, a few days ago, I just spent time thinking, and I asked myself some questions, and then I pretty much answered them on my own. So I remember one of the questions that I asked myself was, what does the healing process look like after a breakup? And then, I kept thinking, and I said, well, the healing process can definitely, it definitely is greatly, it varies. Excuse me. It varies from person to person. It typically involves stages such as shock and denial, pain and guilt, anger and depression, reflection, which I've done a lot of reflecting, loneliness, and, acceptance and hope. It's important to understand that healing is not linear and may involve revisiting certain stages. So then I asked myself, why is it important to acknowledge and understand these stages? And I was talking to a friend, and some of the things we came up with were acknowledging these stages helps in understanding that the emotion you're expecting the emotion that you're experiencing, correction, are normal and part of the process. It prevents feelings of isolation and self blame, making it easier to navigate pretty much through the pain. And, as I think about this, it's again, it's fully, you know, dissecting, digesting this entire thing, trying to understand, trying to come to terms with it, trying to somehow, because eventually we want to make peace with it, right? So I said, you know, when it initially happened, I said to myself, well, what if there's a chance that we can actually talk about this in person, or maybe in a few days she'll be able to come back and say, hey, let's revisit this conversation. But that didn't happen. That conversation was final. There was no going back on her end. She said what she needed to say, I said what I needed to say. And now, as I think about it, I say to myself, I wish I could have answered some of the things that she said that day differently, because I actually recorded our conversation. I recorded the breakup. It was over the phone. And like I mentioned before, it was exactly 2 hours and 22 minutes long. And the reason why I recorded it is because this was a moment that I knew was going to change my life forever. And I wanted to document that. I wanted to have it somewhere where I can listen to it from time to time. And if I didn't get closure then, I was going to get closure at some point. And closure to me in this situation is very, very, very important. And when I realized that everything she said was final, and that was the last conversation I had with her, which was the March 21st of this year, we never spoke on the phone again. I never heard her voice ever again. I said, well, now that I'm in full understanding that there's a possibility we're never going to talk ever again, even though we did text a few times after that, up until the middle of April. Middle of April was the last time I heard from her. So I said to myself, what practical steps can one take to start this healing process? And I said, allowing yourself to grieve and feel the emotions. That's number one. Number two, seeking support from friends, family, or therapists. In my case, I have been seeking support from my friends. I haven't really spoken to my family about this, mainly because my family and we don't see eye to eye for the most part. But, I did inform like my siblings that my ex-girlfriend and I were no longer together. Of course, I told my mom because my mom asked me about her. My mom was able to meet her once, and that was last year when she came to Brooklyn for the first time. And my mom just happened to be home, and I introduced her to my mom. And that was the first and last time she saw my mother. On the other hand, I met her mom, and I seen her mom a handful of times. I went to the mother's house a handful of times. Um, and, because I was very limited with who I wanted to talk to about this, because I definitely didn't want to speak to like random people about it. But, I seeked support from friends. I did go over it with my family, but didn't seek any support from them. My mom did say to me in the conversation that she said to me, well, I kind of had a feeling that you and this girl were not meant to be. And I mentioned that to you in the beginning of your relationship with her. And she said, I think that you're very giving. And I remember her saying something like, I know you're my son. And the type of man that you are, you need a woman that appreciates you and appreciates what you give her and appreciates your presence. And, my mom said that to me, it made me think a lot, right? And I was able to share that with my therapist. So I spoke to my therapist about it. And, my therapist has been very instrumental. Another person that I was able to speak to about it was someone that I recently met who has become some type of a spiritual advisor. His name is James. And eventually I will talk to everyone about James. But, I already went over number 1 and number 2. Number 3 is engaging in self-care activities like exercise, hobbies, and meditation. This is something that almost everyone I've spoken to has told me this. Find something self-care, to do with that, exercise, go back to the gym, find hobbies, travel, do something that makes Rob feel good. And of course, meditate. Number 4, this is a very important one. Setting boundaries with my ex to avoid reopening wounds. And lastly, journaling my thoughts and feelings to process them better. And that's what I've been doing. In the last episode, I showed you guys the journal that she had given me, the 5-year memory journal. And I've been journaling, you know. Some of the questions that I'm asked daily in that journal, a lot of it is very relative now. And also, more than ever, I've been writing things down on my cell phone, in the notes section of your phone. If you have an iPhone, the iPhone has something called notes. And I've been writing in there. And I have a yellow pad. I don't know where it is right now, but somewhere here in my office. And um, I've been writing things down in the yellow pad. Before the breakup, when I felt that the end was coming, then to the end, we were nearing the end, her and I. I did write a lot of things on my notes, and I wanted to have a phone conversation with her and tell her every single thing that I wrote down. And I just felt like, because it's one thing she did ask me in the breakup, in the beginning of the conversation, she asked me, why didn't you, during the time that we were going through this, why didn't you talk to me about it? And I said to her, well, number 1, our communication was never the best. Number 2, I felt like I was losing access to you, which I was. And number 3, I was discussing with my friends because they were the ones that were helping me kind of understand where this is coming from, especially like my female friend who I vented to and spoke to about this so much. And I said to her, reason why I spoke to my friend, Estefania, is because she's a woman. And I want to understand where women are coming from when it comes to these type of things. I could have a conversation with the fellas, with my friends, the guy friends, and guys are only going to speak, the way guys speak, right? So I needed a female perspective. And I wanted someone who, for the most part, was unbiased. And my friend Stephanie actually did meet my ex-girlfriend last year, the day before her birthday, because she had helped me get her birthday cake. And she actually came to the hotel where I was with my ex-girlfriend and dropped it off. And, I had told my ex to come downstairs so she could meet her. And, they hugged each other. And I asked her after, how do you feel about her? Um, she was very vocal. And she said, listen, I just want you to be happy. I know the kind of guy that you are. I know how stressed you were to plan this birthday. You wanted it to be perfect. And, you cared so much how she would feel if the birthday did not go as planned. The birthday plans did not go as planned, And, I'm very thankful for my friend Estefania. And Who knows? Maybe someday I'll have her on this podcast. She's not much of a person that likes the attention and the limelight and whatnot. But I think it's important to hear from someone that's been very instrumental in my life. Another person that's been very instrumental through this process, through this journey, is an associate of mine. Her name is Aranka. And Aranka is a much older woman. And, she's been there, done that. She's been married. She has a son. And, she's been separated from her husband for a long time. And she was giving me a lot of advice. And, sometimes, and here's the thing about it, that we never really had phone conversations where she would give me advice. This advice was coming through voice notes. She would leave me voice notes, because this is how sometimes we communicate. Because sometimes I'm busy, sometimes I'm traveling, sometimes I'm doing what I need to do for me, and sometimes she's working herself, because we both work with Dolce and Gabbana. We're both brand ambassadors for Dolce and Gabbana, and sometimes we're on the go. And when we're on the go, the only way that we can, engage with each other is either through text or voice note. And in one of the voice notes that she left me, I remember one time listening to it and just, processing the whole thing. She talked about love and trust, and she says in relationships, there needs to be love and trust. If there's no love and trust, there's no relationship. And, Aranka and I've known Aranka since October of last year, when I actually started working with Dolce Gabbana again. And, never in a million years would I think that this woman that, I was simply working with, doing events for the company, would play such a motherly figure role now and give me some of the best advice I've ever heard. And, like I said, she is a woman, and listening to her speak, listening to her perspective about things really, really, really helps. It really helps. And I'm so thankful for her. I've told her this, and I will always tell her how thankful I am. And, I know that she's going to be giving me advice for a very, very long time. And I'm open for it. I'm open for all of it. So, going back to the journaling, when I realized that it was very difficult to talk to this woman, my ex-girlfriend, actually pick up the phone. Because, some people will say it's not that hard. It's you just pick up the phone and say, hey, I need to talk to you. I need to share something with you. But the type of person that she was, the type of person that she still may be, it's not easy to talk to her, especially if it's not even in person. If it's in person, it's like I can be able to see if she's invested in the conversation, if she's actually listening. Over the phone, I don't know. She could have me on mute for all I know, and she could be doing something else. She could be playing a video game or reading something, or, just listening to bits and pieces of what I'm saying. I wanted to have this conversation with her in person. And what sucks is the last time I saw her was February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day. I went to her house and I brought her some Valentine's Day gifts. And that was the last time I saw her. And, during that time, because it was the first time I got to see her in the year, because the last time I saw her was the day after Christmas last year, up until February. If I'd known that that was the last time I was going to, a part of me kind of felt like this is the last time I'm going to see her. I don't know if I'm ever going to see her again. But if I was so certain that this was the last time I was going to see her, I would have done things differently. Instead of going to her house and giving her gifts and just trying to enjoy the very little time I had with her, I should have sat down with her and said, look, here's a few things that I've been journaling and I want to talk to you about. So when I wasn't able to do that in person, because I just failed to do that in person, I kept journaling more. And then finally, before we broke up, which is what led to the breakup conversation, was a video that I sent her. And in the video, I read everything that I had journaled. And a lot of it was deep. And, as the time goes by, as, the episodes keep coming, we're at episode 7 right now. And I'm like, wow, 7 episodes in, I'm going to keep talking about these things, and I'm going to share with everyone the things that I journaled, little by little. So, now that we've discussed, what does the healing process look like after a breakup? We've talked about why it's important to acknowledge and understand these stages. And then we've also talked about what are the practical steps that a person can take to start the healing process. Now I want to talk about how can one stay motivated to continue these steps even when it's tough, because it's never easy. Remember, things are hard before they're easier, right? So I took some time and I said to myself, I got to stay motivated. Creating this podcast was to stay motivated, to find inspiration, to find motivation, and to help motivate others and to help inspire others. So I said to myself, how do I do that for me? I'm the one going through this right now. I'm sharing my story. So I said, staying motivated involves setting small, achievable goals and celebrating progress, no matter how minor. And reminding yourself of the end goal. What's the end goal here? We broke up. I'm healing. There's a possibility we're never going to get back together. So what am I going to do to move on and become who I need to be? So, reminding yourself of the end goal is, emotional and mental and, like I said, the goal is, emotional and well-being and what can help. So what I mean about that is surrounding yourself with a supportive community and finding inspiration in stories, wherever you can find inspiration in. But the way I love to find inspiration is through stories of others who have healed, because that can be very encouraging. Listening to people's story, how they dealt with it. Everybody's different, of course. You're always going to hear different stories. You're always going to hear different insights. Some stories are going to be very tough to process. Some stories are going to be, oh wow, that's how you found resilience. Some stories are going to be longer than others. Some stories are going to be shorter than others. Some stories are going to be more difficult to understand than others. Some stories are going to be, very interesting. And, that's how, for me, we have to find some type of motivation during the healing process. Then I said to myself, we've already discussed all those things. Now, finding resilience through healing. How do we find resilience through healing? And then I said to myself, because I was talking to a friend of mine named Victor, and we were talking, and I mentioned Victor in a few episodes in the past. And I was asking him, I was like, Victor, I started this podcast and it's called the Resilient Podcast. And I said to him, by the way, what does resilience mean to you? And Victor was like, resilience? And then, he gave me his response, and I thought it was beautiful. And I'm not going to share with you guys because I plan to bring Victor on this podcast one day. And when he does make it to this podcast, I would like Victor to share with everyone what he feels resilience is to him. And, I said, what does resilience mean in the context of healing from a breakup? Because remember, resilience is for many things. In my case, I'm trying to find resilience in healing from this breakup that I recently went through. And I said, resilience in this context means the ability to bounce back from the pain of the breakup, learning from the experience, and growing stronger emotionally. It involves developing a mindset that sees challenges as opportunities for growth. To me, that's the only way. I have to develop the mindset to see the challenges as an opportunity. And then I said to myself, okay, so how can someone cultivate resilience during the healing process? And I said, cultivating resilience can involve reframing negative thoughts and focusing on positive aspects of life. And that's pretty much the main reason why I created the podcast. Because I said to myself, do I spend the next few months, year, whatever it is, just sad, depressed, angry? Sometimes we have to build a routine. I believe it's good to build a routine that includes activities that promote well-being and learning new skills or hobbies to build confidence and self-worth. I think that's great. The new skills that I learned was that as much as I can talk, I can use that energy and journal it. And that's how I was able to create articles before and after WrestleMania. Where in the last episode, I mentioned to you guys that I wrote 3 separate articles, one to The Rock, one to Roman Reigns, and one to Cody Rhodes after WrestleMania. Something I've never done before. I just didn't know how to write, because when I was in school and it was time to do an essay, the worst. But, with the power of Grammarly and all these things now, that all these resources that are available now for people, all you have to do is just write a few things together, put it out there for Grammarly to help you, detect, how can you resentence something? How can you realign something? And that's all it takes. And of course, even before that existed, what were we doing before? You shared with someone who is a writer. So that's what I did. Every article that I wrote, I shared it with people that have writing experience. And they were able to help me with some edits. And after I wrote those articles and posted them and read them to myself and other people read them, it helped me build some type of confidence that I never thought I would ever have. And this is the most important thing to me during the healing process. We need to practice mindfulness and gratitude to stay present and appreciate the positives. Just because Ashley and I are not together anymore does not mean that life stops. Does not mean that she was the only good thing in my life. There is tons of good things in my life right now, and I need to take the time to remain present with that and appreciate it. And that's something that we need to think about. One of the questions that I asked myself was, can I even share an experience or pivotal moment that helped me find resilience during a healing process for something else, something from the past. This is not the first time that my heart is broken. Hopefully, it is the last time that someone breaks my heart. But, you know, I said, hmm, how did resilience play a major part? So I said, you know, what moments have I had in the past that were significant in healing and, made me realize during a conversation, maybe with a friend. And I said, could have been an impactful book, could have been a podcast, therapy. And I said, you know what? Therapy definitely helped. Definitely therapy. Therapy definitely helped. I've been in therapy for over 5 years now, and it's the best decision I ever decided to make. And I'm glad that I've invested in having a therapist, and I'm not letting go of therapy anytime soon. When my ex and I had the breakup conversation, she also was seeing a therapist. I actually had asked her during the time that we were dating to please go back to therapy because she said the last time she had spoken to a therapist was when she was in the military. And because of the things that she was going through, because of the way she was acting during our relationship, I said, I hope that she could find a good therapist. And she did. She never really shared too much with me what she discussed with her therapist, but she was able to tell me that it was a guy. And when we broke up during the breakup conversation, she mentioned to me that she had told her therapist that because of the career change that she was going to begin with, she felt that she didn't need a therapist anymore. And she told them that she was going to have a 1.5 mile run. And during that run, she was going to leave everything on that field, all the anger, all the hate that she had endured, that she was living with. And she was going to try to make peace with everything. And when she told me that she told him, I'm no longer going to be needing your services, I said, wow, that's brave. Is she going to be able to become who she needs to become once she gets rid of therapy? And, I wish that I had an answer to that. I wish that I can be able to follow up with her today and see where she's at with everything, but we don't communicate anymore. She decided not to talk to me anymore, and I have to respect the decision. But I said to myself, I know that therapy has helped me a lot. Therapy has actually helped me find the answers to a lot of things. And listening to podcasts or watching a motivational video on Instagram has helped me a lot as well too. And the fact of the matter is we never stop learning. Learning should be an everyday thing. To me at least it is. It's an everyday thing. And I'm just thankful that I have the resources that I have. And because I've had those resources, it's helped me find resilience in things in the past. And I expect it to help me find resilience with what's happening with me now. With all of this being said, advice and encouragement plays a major role in the healing process. And I know that someone would ask me at some point something like, what advice would you give to someone currently struggling with the aftermath of a breakup? You know, because I've been sharing with people the breakup story. And some people have been telling me their breakup story, if they had a breakup story. Eventually, someone's going to ask me, I'm going to share the story with someone like, oh, yeah, I met this person. I, thought she was the one. This is the girl that I wanted to marry. And she ended up not being that person. And then that person's going to ask me, well, how did you deal with it? How are you dealing with it now? Are you still dealing with it? And I said, well, you know what? My advice would be for anyone going through this right now. As a matter of fact, let's do it right now. The question would be, what advice would you give to someone currently struggling with the aftermath of a breakup? And my response to that would be, my advice would be to be kind and patient with yourself. Remember, healing takes time, and it's okay to have bad days. It's okay to seek support when you need it, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Focus on self-care and personal growth. We spoke about this already. Self-care and personal growth. And remember that this pain you're feeling right now is temporary, and you will come out stronger. Remember that. Pain is temporary. And how can one balance a desire to move on with the need to process their emotions? This is the way I feel. I feel that balancing these desires involves allowing yourself time to grieve and process emotions while also gradually introducing new experiences and routines into your life. It's about finding a balance between acknowledging your pain and taking proactive steps to move forward. That's how I feel. We got to reinforce the message that healing and resilience are possible with time and effort. And remember that it's important. It's always going to be important to encourage yourself to understand the importance of self-love and patience. Patience is what you need to help you take your time throughout the healing process. And self-love is what's going to allow you to even want to do that to begin with, because you're going to say to yourself, I don't want to spend the rest of my life sad and angry and bitter and resentful and this and that and whatnot. I need to make it past this. I need to overcome all of this. And, I mentioned to you guys earlier that this month of July, on the 20th, I was supposed to make 11 months with my ex-girlfriend, Ashley. And then the next day, the 21st, was 4 months of us not speaking to each other anymore and the breakup. The 21st of March was the last time that I spoke to her on the phone. And that was the day that we broke up. So it's been 4 months since then. And as I reflect on the past year, it's pretty much about to, like, next month will be a year since I met her. And I've been very open about this, and I admit that it's been tough to process that she's no longer in my life. The breakup, which, um, happened exactly 4 months ago, has been the most challenging journey that I've ever been in. And the reason why is because the memories that we shared and the plans that I made for us, for me and her, often linger in my mind. And that's one of the things, like the what could have been, the we should have been, the woulda, coulda, shoulda, like, whatever that is, however they say it. And it's making it difficult for me to move forward. However, through this podcast and the conversations that I've been having with you guys, the conversations that I've been having with my friends, the conversations that I've been having with my therapist, I hope to find and share ways to heal and build resilience. But remember, it's okay to feel the pain, but it's also important to find the strength within to rise above it. I want to thank everyone for tuning into this episode, number 7. And I look forward to speaking to everyone, episode number 8. Episode number 8, I actually believe, I strongly, strongly believe I will be having my second guest. Don't know who it is yet, but I promise you it's going to be someone special. So I want to thank everyone that tuned in for this episode. And like I always mention in every episode, I want a message to the world. And today's message is, I am trying to think less about the people that I wish were showing up for me and more about the ones who are. I've been coming face to face with some uncomfortable truths about myself, the people I love, and the dynamics that we create together. I've started to see everything more clearly all at once. And for a while, I didn't know what to do with all of the new information. Some days I wish that I could forget everything. And, ignorance really feels like it might be my path to bliss. I can see some of my own self sabotaging patterns. I can see the moments when I had failed some of the people that I promised to always show up for. I can see the moments when I don't even give people a chance to show up for me. All of this stuff being revealed has been heavy and hard to sit with. Sometimes it feels like I am receiving all of this new information without any understanding of what I want to do with everything I'm learning. Every new piece of information feels like a shock to my system. For a while, I was spinning in circles because I had no clear direction or destination to serve as my North Star. I knew a lot more about the terrain around me, but didn't have any new information about how to navigate. I got to a point where I decided that I was truly tired of being tired, that I couldn't afford to let my new found awareness stop me in my tracks forever. So I told myself, and I told my therapist, that instead of sorting through my frustrations for an indefinite period of time, I wanted to focus on what matters. Those two words, what matters, have become a guide and grounding mantra for me. I know that I can acknowledge everything that I see while making the conscious choice to focus on the good. And that's because it helped me articulate and internalize that I can still appreciate the good in any relationship or situation while being aware of the bad. So again, folks, I am trying to think less about the people that I wish were showing up for me and more about the ones who are. Appreciate those that care about you. And those are pretty much the people that are pouring into your cup. So continue to pour into theirs. Don't pour into the cups of those that are not pouring into yours. Never pour into anyone's cup that is not pouring into yours. Because when you see that that cup has not been filled, you're always going to have some type of expectation. And when those expectations are not met, it's going to result into disappointment. So again, I want to thank you all for tuning in to episode 7. I look forward to episode 8. And for now, this is me saying goodbye. And remember, folks, one life to live, live it well. I love you all, and God bless always. Peace.